Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our weekly ship show. My name is Jason Brandt. I'm the Director of Outreach and Partner Development here at Supply Chain Solutions. And for this week, we've got Kendra Kuo joining us on our show from the U.S. Department of Commerce. Kendra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So Kendra's the director of the Grand Rapids, Michigan office for the U.S. Commercial Service. It's part of the trade promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce. She works with companies, and the goal is really to develop ways to build their international marketing strategies with a goal of providing them on guidance on really every single level of the export process. So she joined the Commercial Service all the way back in 2000 after working as an assistant director of international trade for an industry association. And currently, she is serving as the executive secretary for the West Michigan District Export Council. Almost got a little bit tongue twisted there. And last year, Kendra received the Hillman Orr Award from the World Affairs Council of West Michigan, recognizing her for her leadership and global engagement in the region. And if you have not been a part or an opportunity to go to those World Affairs Council meetings, you really need to. They're fantastic. They've got a lot of phenomenal guests. And Kendra, congratulations on that award, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So absolute pleasure having you on. And to all of you out there looking to ramp up your export business, you got to reach out to her. So reach out to us directly. We'll put you in touch with her, or just reach out to her directly. Now, she's proven time and time again that she can create a really clear path through the complicated process of starting up or expanding an export program. So she's a great resource. You really should use her. And she's well known in our community too. So we're going to dive in though. So Kendra, and just as I said, we've been in a lot of local events together, and a few of these have been focused around this topic, but I really just want you to address this a little for our listeners. And it's a bit of a compound question, but first, why should businesses consider starting an export program? And then secondly, from your point of view, what are the common challenges that you see businesses facing when they're starting up an export program, or they're just expanding into a new market?
Yeah, great question. So we found that exporters typically are, having more jobs for the area and generally pay their employees higher wages. So exporting is good for the economy. 95% of the world market is outside of the US. So if you're not selling beyond the US borders, you're really missing out on some great opportunities. But that said, we do about 3 trillion annually from the US in export goods and services. But exporting can be complicated. It can be messy. We see that there are some challenges, and that's why we're here to help with the U.S. Commercial Service, helping small to medium-sized companies as they have these challenges. And we've noticed that challenges tend to fall into 2 different buckets. I'd say one is just understanding documentation requirements, and then the second is kind of having like a lack of focus on their international objectives.
Yeah, honestly. Great point. Really, I couldn't agree with you more. And really, one of those, I kind of want to double down on one of those points because, if I, from our point of view, was going to mention a pain point that we most often see from our customers, specifically our international business customers, it would be a no-brainer to point to just a general misunderstanding of the custom document requirements and that go into shipping goods into or out of a country. And
Right.
like many clients we see, especially new clients, they just simply don't understand the burden associated with the full documentation needs. But there's also an overhead of time requirement. I mean, it's a communication between commercial services, and it can be very challenging. So we spend a lot of time educating our customers on the needs that customs has for them and their duty. And really, we're trying to educate as much as possible that, before you consider sourcing a new material or good from another country, you need to figure out the customs needs and requirements. You need to do your due diligence, and please don't purchase anything before figuring out your customs requirements, because that is always when you want to ship it and you're like, wait, you don't know the HTS code. You don't know if you can ship this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
need to have that information. The more you can do on the upfront end, the easier your life's going to be. It's going to save you and your customers, lots of time and worries. If you don't meet the satisfaction, so from my perspective, we're only helping U.S. companies to export, but obviously you, Jason, are working both with exporters and importers. So it's important to understand what the regulations are, both from a U.S. export standpoint. What are the regulations so that you can be in compliance to sell internationally? Because if you don't understand that, you could get fined,
Mhm.
or, have jail time, which is
Yeah.
always kind of scary, right? No one wants
Yeah.
to hear that. Um, or lose your export privileges.
Oh,
And then
man.
from the destination country, you want to make sure that you hit the import requirements because you don't want your stuff to get stuck in customs. So the more you can do on the front end, the better. We do have some resources on trade.gov to kind of help you understand that. We have something called the Country Commercial Guide, which our U.S. commercial officers update every year. This is done in 80 countries where we have offices and U.S. embassies and consulates. So under the Country Commercial Guides, there's a section specifically on customs standards and regulations for each country. And if for some reason that one isn't up to date, you can contact us and we can put you in touch with the embassy there to get direct information from their equivalent government, employees in the different countries to get you up to date on that. We also have some video tutorials about the basics of exporting on trade.gov. And then we have something called Customs Info Database, which can kind of give you an idea of what your estimated tariffs might be. But like you mentioned, Jason, of
Okay.
course, you want to connect with the person that you're doing business with to see if they can help you navigate that too, because you don't want to end up in a situation where they think you need these documents and you think you need something else. It's better to clarify it up front.
Yeah, I really love how you ran through that real quick because you're so right. The resources you are providing are kind of right from the source of follow this way, or you might be in the wrong when it comes to export compliance. And I'm glad you mentioned the export compliance concerns there because I love those classes. They scare me half to death, and it reminds me
Right.
that hey, do it right, do it right,
Yeah. Yeah.
spend your
Don't mess
time.
around.
Literally, don't mess around. I want to kind of go into this rabbit hole a little bit because I think we saw many years ago kind of the international supplier market open up with websites like Alibaba. Now you have the
Mhm.
ability to any individual start to direct communicate with these suppliers, but it happens both directions. So companies see these opportunity for sales in other countries, and they need to understand what they need to do prior to fulfilling or just believing they can, fulfill that order. Um, but I want to talk a little bit about your point of view. So you mentioned those two areas of concern, one being the documentation concern. So could
Mhm.
you let's go to your point of view. Obviously, we have a lot of concerns we see around documentation, misunderstandings. What about from your standpoint? What's the confusion you see around that?
Just staying, sometimes it could be about free trade agreements, like understanding how to comply with free trade agreements. So we do have a section on trade.gov about that as well. Understanding which agreements, how you meet the origin for that specific rule of origin on the trade agreement. So that's something that we can work you through, and definitely you can work with your service provider, like Supply Chain Solutions. But I think that's one of the miscommunications, and then also just understanding which documents are needed depending on which products you're selling. So again, you can go back to the Country Commercial Guide and take a look at those. Hopefully that can be at least a starting point to get you started on knowing what documents you need. And then after you do it once or twice, kind of, keep track of what's required for each country, it gets easier, but just
Mhm.
knowing upfront what you need to start.
Yeah. When you know your product and you start shipping it, and you start to learn some of the uniqueness that it might require when it comes to customs. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Well,
this
like
is funny.
another example would be like USMCA. If you learn that your requirement for your product, you're trying to meet the certain requirement for the origin so that you can qualify for USMCA, but then you find out it maybe for your product it wouldn't have been a tariff anyway. So is it worth doing all that extra work if you didn't need to? So those are things that you want to look into.
That's a great example, literally a great example. We've got a lot of, and I'm glad you kind of pointed that out earlier. We handle a lot of imports, and you are very focused on exports. Now we've got a bunch of Lacey Act updates that are coming into effect for the beginning of December, and this has been just a phasing in program since early 2000s. And it's we try really hard to keep our customers who may be affected by some of these custom changes well in the loop of the changes before they happen. But
Hmm.
there's just depending on what you're shipping, depending on where you're shipping from, depending on a lot of factors, there could be the requirements list changes. And so this is again the importance of just doing your due diligence before. And trade.gov is a wonderful website when it comes to a resource, and at least giving you a good gut check of some of the things that you will likely encounter in certain areas and such, so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, it's important to stay in touch with your service provider because oftentimes they're ahead of what's coming down the pike that you may not be aware of. So if they know at least what countries you're interested in or where you think your bigger customers are coming from, then they can help you stay in sync with that.
It's just like those memes. We're always stressed because there's always something affecting us that's the end of the world. So please reach out to us. We would love to just unload some of our stresses. Oh gosh, you're shipping this? Okay, here's the deal. here's what's coming down the line.
Look out.
In 5
Yeah.
years. No. So let's get back to the topic here. I really want to focus on those 2 points. So one, there's document requirement confusion around that. We see that all the time as well. Now, you mentioned an interesting one, that lack of focus. Explain the lack of focus.
Yeah. So I think, staying focused or having a plan is definitely easier to say than do. But to have a good strategic plan really is a game changer. So helping companies to identify what markets hold the most potential for them, not just kind of willy-nilly it or waiting for a company to contact you, but really having a strategic focus. We like companies who are focused that can, proactively look out for international partners. That's something that we can also help with as far as helping you to find international partners who can help expand your sales. We can help you vet them, help you actually locate them, set up appointments for them. But in addition to that, we have other trainings like Export Tech, where we do a strategic training process for each of the companies that participate. So our next cohort starts in October, and we limit that to like 8 companies so that we can keep the process individual. And at the end of the section, each company presents their own strategic plan to a panel of experts, and the panel will give some feedback, positive and negative, strategic feedback on, well, okay, we're glad that you identified these 2 countries, but have you thought of this one or something like that? So it's good to limit it down, to narrow down, to really get your return on your investment, because it is expensive to invest in these markets. So you want to make sure that you're picking ones that have the most potential for you. And another tool that we have that can help, if you're not willing or if you're not wanting to do a whole plan, but you want to kind of have some more data at your fingertips, there's something on trade.gov also called the market diversification tool that can help give you some information on that.
So a couple things. First of all, do you mind sending me over that information on that October cohort?
Sure.
I'd love to get that out to our customers so they've got the
Yep.
opportunity to join that. And that market diversification tool. So if you are in the West Michigan area, there was actually a walkthrough of the tool at one of the events, I want to say 2 years ago. Was that
Oh,
right,
really?
Kendra?
Okay. Yeah.
I believe it was. And I
you're
was
right.
there, and I was
great.
sitting there watching the walkthrough. I was like, holy cow, this is pretty awesome. And so it's an awesome tool. Kendra, walk through what it is, what it does, why it's so valuable for everyone. And break that down real quick.
So basically, the tool helps analyze current trade patterns based on your specific product. It looks at indicators based on your HS code, and also country indicators like rule of law or ease of logistics, some other World Bank indicators. But it's pretty user friendly. I can send a link to you so you can post it with your show notes. But basically, you put in where you're currently exporting to, and it gives you data on whether are some other potential markets of interest. So I think it's a nice, easy way to get started. It's not an end all be all, but it's a good start into market research. So you can identify which countries might have potential for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It really feels like an advancement from the trade.gov information and video tutorials to a point where people can get that like level 1 research that can point them in the right direction. And then they can start to kind of run down the rabbit hole a little bit.
It spits out a nice spreadsheet for you.
Yeah.
And then you can weight the factors in different ways to suit your needs. So I think it's a great tool.
It even covers factors such as like the logistics ratings of the companies of the countries as well. So it really gives you an idea of, is this going to be hard to ship within, ship out of, and everything. Very cool. Really, really, really awesome tool. We use it on occasion too, because sometimes when we're entering a new market for a customer, it's nice to get that logistics rating, and just from a standpoint like, okay, hey, if we're going to spend time locating providers locally, what's going to be the competitiveness of that region. So very, very cool. Okay, let's see here. Hang on. I got one more I want to ask you real quick. You got to tell me a little bit about strategies and such. So I'd like to know, I'd like to know what strategies you'd give customers for just making sure they're up to date with big major changes that are happening in just the trade environment, but also
Mhm.
strategies to keep them competitive when they are, in international business, specifically exporting.
Yeah, well, of course, communication is everything, right? So be in communication with your potential buyers, but also communicate with your service providers, like we talked about before. It's important to know, because the lawyers, the accountants, and the freight providers, they know what's coming down the pike. So it's important to let them know what markets you're interested in. I'd also suggest that companies consult with the SBA or with their state economic development partner, like MEDC, to see if there are any state grants available for you to help you expand your exports, like the STEP grant. And then again, I sound like a broken record player, but trade.gov, we do have a lot of resources on there too, as far as webinars and things that are maybe changing on webinars, and then trade missions, like our trade winds mission is coming up next year in April, going to Brazil and some other countries in Latin America. So just being aware of what opportunities are out there and figuring, again, going back to your own strategic plan, we're going to be throwing a lot out at you. You have to decide, does that fit with your plan? What makes the most sense for you? And then in addition to that, I'd recommend, just keeping in touch with the District Export Council in your state. So in Michigan, we have one here in West Michigan, and then we also have another in East Michigan. And these are individuals who've been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce to help advise companies on doing business internationally. And a lot of them are volunteering because they kind of been there, done that, and they want to save you the pain of the pain that they hard earned experience they learned along the way. And so they work alongside us as a volunteer. So, with the government, we have resources, we can give you tools and all these great things, but it's also very reassuring to have someone who's actually been there, done that, and can talk about how they did international sales for their country, for their company, or what are the best practices they've seen, like working with different currencies or finding a logistics provider, et cetera. So you can find more information on the National Association of District Export Council, or feel free to call me and I can put you in touch with the right state, depending on
Kendra,
your location.
just thank you so much, honestly. And big thanks for joining us on this Friday. And this is unique for us. Normally we're on Thursday. So big thanks for joining us on this
No
Friday.
problem.
So
Thanks for having
SES,
me.
yeah, of course, of course. So we work with companies all around the nation and around the globe, and it's our goal to import and export easily and cost effectively. But
Hmm.
it wouldn't be possible for us to do our jobs without people like Kendra, kind of making
Hmm.
this a known fact. Hey, exporting can be easy. Let's show you how to do it, and let's make this as easy as possible. So big thanks. You've done so much for our community in West Michigan. Big thanks from all of SES. Thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you, Jason.
We really appreciate it. All
It's
right.
great working with you.
Yeah. Hey, honestly, we love it as well. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Make sure you reach out to Kendra directly. There's a lot of to-dos from this episode. Okay. First of all, you got to go to trade.gov. It's required homework. Second of all, you got to check out the market diversification tool, and you got to play around with it for a little bit because it really has a lot of valuable information. But third, there are some opportunities to get involved and learn in person. So make sure you're reaching out to Kendra or us, and we'll put you in touch and make sure you can get involved in those groups and such. So everyone, thanks so much. Kendra, again,
Thanks.
really appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Make
Bye.
it a great day. Make it a great holiday, guys.